Social justice is the idea that all groups of people should be treated equally and have equal opportunities, regardless of race, gender, or economic standing. My chosen topic is environmental justice, and environmental justice is basically how social justice relates to environmental hazards, meaning that everyone should have equal effects of environmental hazards. And environmental racism is basically when environmental justice is not achieved and poor or minority groups are unfairly exposed to environmental contaminants. Here's some statistics about environmental racism. A study from the EPA's National Center for Environmental Assessment in early 18 produced some statistics that showed the reality of environmental racism, showed here on the left. They showed that compared to white people, Hispanic people were 1.2 times more likely to be exposed to dangerous particulates, and for black people, the number was 1.5 times more likely. And people in poverty were also 1.3 times more likely than those not in poverty, which is significant. But what this shows is that race is actually a bigger factor than wealth when it comes to exposure to environmental contaminants. And then a more localized study was one for the city of St. Louis here that came from Washington University School of Law in St. Louis. And this one shows some more shocking findings, in my opinion, some more extreme findings. The image on the left is the rate of lead poisoning among children in the city. And the darker red wards are where there's more lead poisoning. And it might be hard to see from this view, but some wards are shaded with black dots, and that is where majority black residents. And in general, that's pretty much the north half of the city. And the north half of the city, as you can see, is also where mostly the dark red is. And the southwest of the city, where all my white family lives, is where it's the lightest color and they're the most safe from lead poisoning. And the picture on the right shows a completely different statistic of illegal trash dumping, but as you can see, it shows a very similar pattern. The central statistic is the most shocking of all, showing that black residents were 8.5 times more likely to go to the ER for asthma than white residents were, which seems too great to be a coincidence. 8.5 times more likely. So now to some examples of environmental racism. This was sort of the beginning of the environmental justice movement. It actually started right here in North Carolina in Warren County when the state planned to dispose some polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs for short. They had a landfill planned for Warren County, and those are toxic. So, of course, the residents did not want this, but a factor is that Warren County was 62% African American, the highest in the state. And so residents protested this, led by Reverend Benjamin Chavis Jr., and they protested, and hundreds of people were arrested. They did not prevent the construction of the landfill, but the media attention here effectively started the environmental justice movement, and they did have a sort of consensus with the governor because of this. So it was definitely a big moment. And then another more modern example, just might be the most well known right now, is the Flint water crisis. So Flint is a poor city in Michigan with over 50% of the population being African American. In 2013, in order to save money, the city switched from using Detroit's water to using water from the Flint River, where lots of companies dump waste. The city has even caught fire before. The city did not treat the water well, which led to dangerously high levels of lead. Especially in children, this could be very dangerous. And there was even an outbreak of Legionnaire's disease, which caused 12 deaths. Citizens of Flint had to take this to court in order to get the help they needed because their local and federal and statewide officials were not helping them out adequately. They finally were able to receive some help, And some officials were charged, but the situation still could definitely, obviously, be better, and some pipes might still have lead on them, even if they are at a safe level. Now, to environmental racism in general, the solution is not as simple as other topics of social justice, where the goal would just be to be more equal. Because in a scenario for environmental justice, that would be like doing something like moving toxic wastes to rich white neighborhoods, and that still really doesn't help anyone. So instead, the goal for this is really more along the lines of removing the harmful sites in general, and that will naturally lead to more equality and is a good solution. And here are some of my sources.